Hello, and welcome to Counseling Ethics Lecture 8. My name is Dr. Amber Hughes. In this lecture, I want to review prevalent forms of biases. As I mentioned in the previous lecture, we are required to be multiculturally competent counselors as part of our ethical code. Part of becoming a multiculturally competent counselor is to understand diverse populations. This includes identifying these prevalent forms of biases. We need to know what issues our clients are facing, right? Some of these types of biases are racism, sexism, classism, homo prejudice, ableism, ageism, spiritual and religion bias, and so many more. I'm not going to go into detail with each of these, however, because the text outlines the issues well. Instead, I want to focus on you. As I mentioned also in the previous lecture, we are all cultural beings with our own beliefs and values. With those come biases, many of which are internalized. Most people are not overtly racist. Yes, there are some people who embrace racism and sexism and other forms of prejudice and bias and hate. However, most people are not. That being said, all people have internalized biases. When I say internalized, I mean two things. One, these biases guide how we think and act and what we say. And two, these biases are often hidden from us because they are tied into our belief systems. For example, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school. My hometown is mostly Catholic, German Catholic actually. However, I am no longer a practicing Catholic. I haven't been for years and years. But Catholicism guides how I think about religion, spirituality, the Bible, and my own internalized beliefs about certain things. Some of these biases are harmless. When someone says they are going to church, my internal image is of a Catholic church with stained glass windows and a priest with full robes on at the altar. Other beliefs may be more harmful. For example, I am adamantly pro-choice. However, there was one time when I was working as an academic advisor when I was advising a young woman. I had a really good relationship with her. I remember that I met with her once right before winter break. She had stopped in to see me. I don't remember why she had scheduled the appointment. I imagine it was because she wanted to discuss the following. She told me she was pregnant, but that it wasn't a big deal because she was going to get an abortion over the break. Again, I am adamantly pro-choice. However, I was raised Catholic. I remember winning an award for writing an essay in the 5th grade about pro-life, about how the fetus is a person and we should not abort babies, okay? So I won this essay award. So whenever she told me, this was the first time I had ever encountered someone disclosing they were going to have an abortion. Most of my work has been with adolescent males. Okay. When she told me that, I had a really physical response to her disclosure. I honestly felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I couldn't breathe. I hope that I managed to keep my facial expression neutral and my words showing empathy and support, but I don't remember because I was so focused on my own feelings and thoughts, I didn't know I was going to react this way, okay? I was so focused on myself because it was a bias, a belief that I didn't know about. All right. And so whenever she told me this, it brought those things up. It brought those feelings up. And I didn't know I was going to react this way. Again, because it was an internalized bias. And because it was something I hadn't encountered at that point in my career. Okay. So even though I've done my own work in terms of, my religious beliefs and my beliefs about spirituality and about some of these issues, it's still, that work was mostly cognitive, right? So that work was in terms of my thoughts and my belief system. This was getting at something deeper at that. This was touching on something more emotional, all right? And again, it was something I hadn't realized that I felt, okay? And that's what happens with these internalized beliefs. They often catch us unexpectedly. We often don't know they are there, but there are some things we can do to help find them and to neutralize them. before they impact our work with our clients, because that's ultimately what it's all about. It's about making sure we're serving our clients the best we can, and really trying to see things from their perspective. And where that becomes a problem is when our own perspective keeps us focused on ourselves and not them. Like my example with the student disclosing her abortion. I don't know how I reacted to her because I was so focused on myself and my own beliefs and feelings, all right? And so I wasn't able to effectively counsel her in that situation because I wasn't focused on her and her perspective. I was focused on my own. All right, so some things you can do to work on your own biases. First of all, like I mentioned before, consider your own culture and upbringing along with your subsequent beliefs. And you'll do that through a lot of your courses, especially your diversity course. A lot of what we do ask you to do in this program is focus on yourself and do that work here in this program where you have support and you have people to process these things with. Okay, so that's one part of the work. The second part is identifying and acknowledging these biases can go a long way towards eliminating them, okay? Or if you don't want to eliminate those beliefs, helping you to bracket them, all right? So if you know that they're there, you can begin to set them aside whenever you're counseling someone, or if you know that they're there and you don't want them to be there, you can get rid of them. So again, for example, my example with abortion, my beliefs, my thoughts are that women have the right to choose. Okay, they have the right and the ability to make decisions about themselves and their bodies and their families for themselves with the help of their support systems and their doctors and other professionals. Okay. So I believe that's their right. And so my bias about abortion is something that I don't want to be there because I certainly don't want it to impact my work with people. And so part of that was realizing it was there. Okay, so that after that moment with that one client, with that one student, I was able to know it was there. And then I can start to do my own work. Right? And part of that work is processing and thinking and talking about those things with other people. Another part of that work is just encountering it, okay? So the next time I encountered a situation where someone disclosed abortion or was talking about it, I didn't have quite the same physical reaction, right? So part of our work is something that we can't do until we're faced with that situation, right? Until you're working with a client who has very different beliefs than yours, it really is just thinking and maybe practicing if you're in a class, right? But we can't put you in that situation until you're there. But again, these things can help, okay? Another thing you can do is actively try to retrain your brain, okay? And I'm not going to play this now, but there's a TED Talk by Verna Myers that is awesome, and she talks about how we can retrain our brain to help eliminate some of our biases. She talks about how she does a lot of diversity work. And she talks about how we all, the way I think about it is we all drink the same water. And she says that we were all outside when the contamination came down. Okay, what she's referring to specifically is our African American men, and how even though white people certainly have more prejudicial beliefs about African American men, other minority groups still have those same beliefs, okay? Including African American men, all right? That's because, again, everyone was out there when the contamination came down. We all consume the same information. We all consume the same media. We all listen to the same people in power, okay? We all read the same books. We're all taught the same history. And so we're all going to have some of those same beliefs. And one thing we can do to help get rid of those is to retrain our brain. And what she does during her talk is she shows behind her pictures of strong African American men, successful men, Barack Obama, Colin Powell. So all of these men who are positive examples of African American men. And so she's doing that to retrain our brain. Some of the things that you can do are to help yourself make those positive associations. And some of it's easy and kind of passive, all right? It's like social media is so prevalent today. So it's super easy to follow diverse people on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. And so you can get to get a better sense of who these people are and start to read news and read information that these people are sharing, okay? People who are different from you, all right? And so that helps us to see things from different perspectives. And it's, like I said, it's super easy, right? Read books written by African-American women, listen to music by people who are different from you, okay? So all of these things can help retrain our brain. And again, they're not really, super hard. There are other things you can do, certainly, to help retrain your brain, and you'll have opportunities to do that in your diversity class, and you can certainly take it further. But some of these ways, again, are super easy, especially when you're super busy and a graduate student and working and have a family, okay? But they do help. The final thing I want you to consider is your language, because this is my own perspective. But language is super, super important, and it matters, all right? And this is where our internalized biases come out, okay? It comes out in our facial expressions and our physical reactions, but it really comes out in our language and how we phrase questions and what we choose to reflect and paraphrase. This is why it's important to acknowledge our biases so that we can be intentional with the language that we use. So again, going back to my example with abortion, if I had, and again, I don't remember how I responded because I was so in my head at the moment, but if I had responded to that student by saying something like, are you sure? Okay? It's a fairly simple question that in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad one. Having an abortion is a huge decision, and whenever you're young, you may not realize the consequences of that decision and how much it's going to affect you, right? So in and of itself, that question isn't bad because it's implying that she should think about this, right? But the phrasing of it, are you sure, indicates that maybe it isn't the best decision. It indicates that maybe I don't think she should make this decision. And so what that's doing is it's putting my opinion into the decision-making process. And we do influence our clients, okay? We very much influence our clients. And so that's why it's important to be careful of how we phrase things and what kind of language we use whenever we're forming our questions and our reflections, okay? A better way to respond to her may have been something like, this is a huge decision, because it is, okay? So it's okay to acknowledge these things, right? This is a huge decision. Can you tell me your thought process? Can you tell me how you came to this decision, right? That's more neutral. It's not implying that she's made the bad decision. It's not implying that she should not get an abortion. It's acknowledging that this is a decision that may impact her, that she may not realize has a significant impact on her, and that she should be going through some sort of a decision-making process, right? But whenever you're so focused on yourself and your own reactions and your own beliefs, maybe you're getting upset, maybe you're getting angry, maybe you just have all these thoughts going through your heads, you're likely not being really intentional with your language, and so you're likely going to say things that may impact your client unintentionally. Some final thoughts. Most people have multiple cultural identities, and this is also called intersectionality. So this is becoming to be more of a common term that I've seen a lot in the media. So intersectionality just means that we have multiple cultural identities, okay? So race, ethnicity, gender, and social class are relevant variables for everybody. All right, so all of those things impact who we are. Culture influences an individual's perception of reality, every aspect of our life, okay? Again, this is where it's important to understand your culture so that you can understand how it's influencing your reality, how it's influencing your perspective, how it's influencing your language. And finally, okay, so kind of take a step back. So whenever we say that we don't see color, we love everyone, that's not really a great statement, okay? Because it's not true. We do see color. Our brain sees it, okay? Our internalized biases know that it's there. So it's not about not seeing color. It's not about not seeing religion or gender. It's about seeing those things and knowing that those things make that person a very, very rich, diverse, interesting person. So it's about seeing those things and celebrating them and acknowledging them and understanding how they impact that person to help create them who they are. Okay? Now, so the next step is to be careful. Okay, so you do need to research cultures, and you do need to acknowledge that cultures impact people in different ways. But one of the dangers of studying specific cultural differences is that it can lead to stereotyping. Okay, and so when we ask you to do research on populations, it's not so that you can make assumptions. It's so that you can be aware of maybe natural tendencies of a person, so that you can be aware of language and how things you say may be taken by the other person. It's so that you can be aware of some of these forms of biases that this person may be taking. But you always want to go to the person first and see how they interpret those things. Okay, so we do our research, but we know that culture impacts the individual differently. Okay, so we're still working with the person in front of us. That person in front of us is a cultural person, and so we can do our research to understand their culture, but we need to go to that person to really understand what their culture means to them.